But how I got that job, it really has informed a lot about who I am, how I approach life, how I approach challenges, where I get my courage from.
Yeah.
So I get a call from a friend who is a board member there, and he says to me, "We have a new job opening up at the Science Center for a director of our first capital campaign. And you do all kinds of volunteer work, you raise all kinds of money, you do great work in the community. I think you should go for this job."
Yeah.
And I say to him, "What's a capital campaign?"
Yo, Carl, what's up, man?
Sean, happy Friday. Happy Friday. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing fantastic. This morning we got a brand new dump of snow, and I was looking to change it up a bit with my morning yoga routine. So I took my exercise outside and I pounded away, shoveling the snow, even my neighbor's driveway as well. So I felt refreshed and charged up this morning. Way to turn, the cold and the snow into something positive. I got a great workout this morning. How about you?
No, you're better than me. I said enough. I didn't shovel. I said enough. It's going to have to melt on its own. One way or another, it's going to have to disappear. I did legs today, believe it or not. And then I went upstairs and I saw all the snow and I was like, okay, I'm not doing it.
So you're exercising.
I exercise, but not that. No more. But Sean, you're good. I'm going to have to ask you if you can come help me because I'm not doing it today. I told myself I am not shoveling. But happy Friday just the same.
Happy Friday just the same. Yeah, maybe I'll get my son to come and burn some of that energy out on your driveway. So awesome. So welcome everybody to a brand new episode of As Is To Be, where we unpack transformation, whether that be with our careers, our personal lives, ourselves, and we share their stories of inspiring people from right around the world. I'm your co-host, Sean Achimpong, Digital Transformation Specialist.
And I'm Carl Reed. I go by Creed. I'm also a Digital Transformation Specialist.
Right on. And we have a really exciting guest today that I'm really humbled and inspired and happy to introduce today. Her name is Jennifer Bernard. Jennifer, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let me tell you a little bit about Jennifer. So Jennifer is a certified fundraising executive that has held senior leadership positions with a variety of world-class organizations across the charitable and non-for-profit landscape, helping achieve, outstanding financial results and impacting communities. And this is right around the nation. In addition, Jennifer is also a proud mother of 2 boys. She's an active public speaker and passionate volunteer and mentor. She's chair-elect for the Association of Fundraising Professionals, GTC chapter, the largest fundraising chapter in the world, which is really cool. A member of the Black North Initiative, CEO of the Pledge Committee, and a member of the International Women's Forum Canada. And it doesn't stop there. There's so much more about her that we're going to unpack. In December of 2020, Jennifer was recognized as one of the top 100 most powerful women in Canada and presented with an Inclusion Vanguard Award by the Women's Executive Network. Fantastic.
Amen. Well done, Jennifer.
A few other things about her that really set the tone. This award recognizes an individual, regardless of their gender identity, who has made a profound, thoughtful, and measurable impact on diversity within their organization and a broader community to achieve stronger, more inclusive Canada. In 2018, she was also recognized as one of the 25 most influential women in Canada by Women of Influence, joining a list of trailblazing women who have significantly impacted Canadian society. And finally, in her spare time, she enjoys spending time hiking, trails, gardening, and traveling. Crazy that you have all of this on the go, and so such wonderful hobbies on the side. So thank you again, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction, Sean. When you say it all condensed like that, It makes it sound, really, really big, but it's really a lifetime of work. And, it's been a wonderful journey.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer, we go back.
Oh,
so Sean, like I was saying, one of my first consulting roles was at Trillium Hospital. And had the pleasure of working with Jennifer, and she was just a powerful force back then. So I could only imagine. It only makes sense. Top 100 most powerful women. That makes sense. And we're definitely going to unpack that, Jennifer. But let me first get some maybe background, because I know a little bit about you because we were working.
Bit, yeah.
But
mysterious, right?
Yeah. It's ominous and mysterious. So tell me, how did you get to this point?
I think that, my story is, many people's story, that, call Canada home. I'm very aware of being a part of an immigrant community who came here. My parents immigrated from Trinidad and Tobago, where I was born, in the late 60s. And they're Grenadian, so I have to say that because they're not Trini, and you have to, there's a competition. And so ancestrally, I would say I'm Grenadian, but I was born in Trinidad. And my mom decided, actually, after she had her second daughter, I'm one of 3 children, that she wanted to move to a country where her daughters could have as much opportunity as possible. And she felt like Canada was the place. A lot of people were emigrating to England at that time, but my mom was quite young, had just been married to my father a few years, and decided to come to a country where she knew no one, had no contacts, they had no money, they had no influence, but she felt that what she'd heard about Canada was it was like America, a little colder and a little better. And so she thought that was the place that we would go. And so we did come here in the early 70s. And I've called Mississauga and the areas around Toronto, around Mississauga home my entire life. So I am a girl of the city, like most Black Canadians. I'm urban. I grew up in a very multicultural community here in Mississauga. It's Marlton, which I'm very proud of. And I feel like that gave me the underpinning that has carried me through life. That those first years in a community that embraced immigration, embraced new people coming in, was living a dream of being the first generation to do many things, really set the groundwork for who I became as I was older. And I grew up with a group of people who believed in what we will call the Canadian dream, that, you could be the first generation to go to university, to achieve things. So having that really positive mindset and a community that had that mindset has really informed how I live my life. And so I would say I spent my early years in Mississauga. When I finished high school, I was a really good student in high school.
You were a really good student, or you were not?
I was.
Okay,
I was very academically inclined, and I really thought I was going to be a lawyer for a long time.
Oh, really?
Oh, I would love to be a lawyer and advocate for people. And, that's sort of how I saw myself. And I went to U of T, and, I tried all kinds of different things. I actually studied political science and economics with, a couple of other minors. But when I was at U of T, I wasn't sure if law was the right thing for me. So after I graduated, I decided, I'm going to work for a year, see what that's like, save a little bit of money. I was supposed to backpack through Europe like everybody was doing at that point.
Right.
Got a job.
Okay.
And I can't remember what they paid me, but it was more money than I ever thought I would get coming out of school. So I decided, okay, I'm taking this job. I had a car allowance. That was like, I had a little Toyota Corolla with bald tires and a radio that didn't work, and a car allowance was like winning the lottery. So I was getting a new car. I had a job. I was still living at home, so I felt like I was richer than anybody I knew.
Yes.
Started working, and one of the places I got a job at university was the Board of Trade.
Okay.
At the Toronto Board of Trade. I was in charge of membership for one of their new clubs that they opened near the airport. And I lived in Mississauga, so I was in charge of building that membership. And that taught me so much, not just about, working, but my community. Working at the Board of Trade, you really sit at the center of policy, that drives the economic engine of Toronto, the biggest in Canada. And I also saw what influence did. Who had the influence? Who had the power? Where it sat? How decisions were made? And so I decided that I really wanted to be part of that world. I really wanted to be a person that could influence lives. And I just kept working, ended up not going back to law school, and eventually landed a job at the Science Center.
Okay.
Science Center.
I love the Science Center.
Was a magical place. Anybody that hasn't been there, I highly recommend it. I spent 5 years working there. But how I got that job, it really has informed a lot about who I am, how I approach life, how I approach challenges, where I get my courage from.
Yeah.
So I get a call from a friend who is a board member there, and he says to me, "We have a new job opening up at the Science Center for a director of our first capital campaign, and you do all kinds of volunteer work. You raise all kinds of money. You do great work in the community. I think you should go for this job."
Yeah.
And I say to him, "What's a capital campaign?"
Yeah. Exactly.
I had no idea. And
exactly.
He gives me like sort of the, I'll age myself, the Coles notes or the Wikipedia notes, we would say now. Yeah. Say, okay, it sounds really intriguing. Don't know much about it. And I'll age myself again. I go to the reference library because you couldn't Google it.
Yes.
And I do a whole bunch of research on capital campaigns and what it takes to run one. And I realized right away, I'm in over my head. Like, do not know enough.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk to this group about is courage and doing things before you're ready and putting up your hand before you know everything, which is a huge barrier for young people, particularly women and particularly people of color. Mm-hmm. This idea that you have to know everything, be 100% and be perfect before you start is what holds a lot of people back. But I've grown up in a family and in a world where you are encouraged to stretch yourself. I played a lot of classical piano, not that well. I had done a lot of singing, mediocre. Mm-hmm. I had done a lot of public speaking, that I excelled at. So I had tried a whole bunch of things in my life where I had succeeded and failed forward or learned about myself. And I had looked at failure, especially when you do something like piano, where people are so much better than you will ever be, no matter how much you practice. Mm-hmm. Learn that you should lean in on your strengths often and not in on your weaknesses, right? No matter how much I practice, I would not have been as good as these people. So in a way, I'm wasting my time. So when I get this opportunity at the Science Center, I decide, just go for it. What's the worst that can happen?
So let me pause right there. And it's because I can completely relate to what you're saying, Jennifer. Not from a personal perspective, because I'm a Black man, but my wife, Black woman, she is from Grenada. She also has a similar upbringing, and she was made to give speeches quite early and to do some extracurricular activities. My question is, did someone else have to, you had the courage and you were also encouraged. Did you have to be talked into it, or did you come to that conclusion yourself? I know you did the research, but just table that with, was that an immediate, yes, let's do this, or did someone have to encourage you some more?
That's a great question, Carl. Yeah. I think it's that somebody believed that I could do it.
Okay.
And that, had he not approached me, this board member, I would have never applied, because the gap was too big to me. Like, it was crazy. Like, I had done a lot of volunteer work. I had been very successful writing grants for organizations. I worked at Caravana as a volunteer for many years. I was able to bring in sponsorship. I was able to bring in kind. I was hosting events. But also, and I'll talk about volunteerism and how important it is, I didn't look at that as skills that I was going to use in my real life. I looked at that as my hobbies.
Interesting.
And it was because he realized, and he had the wisdom to say, your hobbies are other people's careers. And you should look at it that way. And so to answer your question, I would say just having that small bit of encouragement and somebody saying, I see it in you, is so important. And that's why I mentor a lot of people, because they just need that little bit of encouragement to say, I see something maybe you don't, and you should go for it anyway.
Okay.
And so I would say that's why I went for it. Had I seen the ad posted, I wouldn't have done it.
Interesting.
But I joined apparently throngs of people going for this job. First time they've ever had a capital campaign. First time they've ever had a capital campaign manager. It's the center. They're redoing the front of the building. They cannot fail. And so I go through this very, very long process of like 10 interviews, and I get this job.
Wow.
At the beginning, I did not know what the job description meant. And that just shows you that one, you know, courage is often rewarded, and you have to be courageous to get the big rewards, you know, big risk, big reward. And even though I wasn't ready, if you're ready to learn, if you're ready to be a student, if you're coachable, if you're going to come well prepared, you can learn really quickly and catch up really quickly, which is what I had to do. I had to build a plane while flying the plane.
Yes.
And I moved on from there. Every place I've worked since has been aligned with my values, has been aligned with who I want to be when I am at work. So the Science Center was a fantasy place we used to go all the time when I was a kid. That's actually why I was attracted to it. I used to go every other weekend. And then I moved to the Royal Conservatory of Music, where I studied for 2 years. And then I moved to Trillium, which was my home hospital. And then I moved to the Children's Hospital in Hamilton, McMaster Children's Hospital, where my son had been taken care of. And then I moved to a women's hospital, which speaks so deeply to who I am. So my values have been tied to my direction, and that has helped me in moments where the place or the people have let me down. Why I had been attracted to that organization had kept me stable when other things sometimes were not stable, because I believed in those organizations. I felt value. I was adding value to the work. And sometimes everything around you isn't adding value, but I felt the work I was doing and I am doing is always adding value. So that kept me strong in times when, you know, things were not great, because I had like lots of experiences where things were not great. But I always felt good about what I did. I never woke up in the morning and said, oh, I'm having such a difficult time at work and I hate where I work. Yes. I hate what I do. I never felt like that.
I'm going to ask you, speaking of volunteers and like fundraising campaigns, I'm curious, like, especially in an organization perhaps doing the same thing for a long time, what tactics do you use to motivate, inspire, and bring awareness to like major fundraising campaigns?
Well, I think, you know, you're talking about fundraising. Fundraising is like every business. It is accelerating and morphing and changing. And it's like, how can you, in fundraising, which is in a not-for-profit world, feel like you're working in the for-profit world, where you're working at the pace of business. So digital transformation is happening everywhere. You guys work in this space. And it's how can you harness that for the not-for-profit world? How can you be part of the transformation of the not-for-profit world into a digital-first environment where you do incredible experiences that way? It's also being really entrepreneurial. I mean, there's a way to do things the way everybody else has done it. And there's looking at great examples from outside your industry and saying, how can I incorporate those things and bring them into my industry to refresh it, to make it more responsive to where and relevant to where we are. So I think it's really not being siloed and keeping your head in the industry you're in, but taking all that you can from the industries around you to refresh what you're doing.
Really thinking outside the box. I love it.
It really is. It really is. I would say the digital transformation and not losing that human touch are two things that are really at odds in a way with fundraising, which is supposed to be very high touch and very personal. And how can you do that when you're only, like for the last 2 years, we've only been digital. You know, we've been able to have events. We haven't had people tour our hospitals. We haven't had people in the way we've in the past. So how can you still have those nurturing relationships Well, you got to bring video into it. You have to be very personal with email. You have to just change the way you do business. And that's what keeps it fresh.
Mm-hmm. Gotta say that you're here to me, Jennifer. I'm learning so much from this conversation. Let me flip the script a little bit and ask, who is your hero?
Well, I gotta say, it might sound boring, but my mom.
Mm-hmm.
It's because, my mom, as I said at the beginning, came here knowing no one. My mom's not highly educated, had no network, and really found a way to make us feel like we belonged here as Canadians. My mom often says, I didn't really know I was Black until I came to Canada.
Interesting.
I'm from a country where you're the dominant race. Nobody walks around going, you're racialized, you're Black, you're in a minority, you're the majority. And so, although she realized when she came to Canada, we were now no longer the majority and we were a minority, she never made me feel like that was going to hold me back. She never made me feel like because I was going to be the only one. And I can tell you almost every space I've been in, from going away to away camp, and anybody that's West Indian knows that that is not an experience you get, because many people from the West Indies do not trust their children to be away from them for a weekend in the woods with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Do not have that experience in their childhood, and they do not understand why people even want to do it. A lot of West Indians, it's a bit of a cliche, but don't swim well because the sea is very dangerous, as my mom says, in the West Indies, and you are not encouraged to go into the sea unless you fish or you do work in the sea. So swimming is not something we do. So I was often the only one in many spaces. And my mom would always say to me, someone has to be first. Why not you? And you have to go because I couldn't go. These are the things I dreamed of. So my mom always made me feel like being the only one was special and that others would be able to follow if I went. She also said, why not you? When I said, oh, well, I don't know anything about capital campaigns, but she'd be like, you're good at this, you're good at this, you're good at this, and you can learn that. She was really the first person, and now there's books written about it that said, if you're smart, you can learn anything. It's really, if you're a good person, if you know how to learn, you can teach people things. It's about fit. So my mom in her very basic way, and she always said to me, you're the only one that can put limits on you. If you tell yourself you can't do something, you won't be able to do it. So I have to say, my mom is in my head all the time. When I have negative dialogue, which I know holds a lot of people back, I turn my mother on. And so she's my hero.
She's your hero. And you also mentioned that you had mentors. And and you talked about courage, and you talked about some of the tactics that you had to lead on as you work. I would like to know, you were working in a sector that was going through some really difficult times, particularly during COVID. Mm-hmm. How is it that how is it that you managed continuing what you're doing now during that period? Who did you have to engage, lean on, and what was it? Courage, or was there any other concepts you had to use to get through those periods?
Well, I think there's a combination of courage and having a good plan, right?
Okay.
All the courage in the world cannot overcome poor planning, and having the right team. I believe in people. Yeah. And I think, if people, I think one of the things people, you're going to even ask about is like, what's the secret sauce? Like, what's the magic? And for me, it always comes back to the people. Institutions don't do things. People do things. Mm-hmm. Institutions don't support you, promote you, train you, mentor you. I love when people say, oh, they have a great mentorship program. Like a program comes in and mentors you. Mm-hmm. I said, who mentors you? Right. Created this program? Who are the people, right? And so I think during COVID, we galvanized our people. First of all, we aligned what we were doing with the greatest healthcare challenge of our time. As the president and CEO of a frontline hospital foundation, Women's College Hospital, we knew we were ground zero for fighting this pandemic, and I had to make my people feel like they were putting on their capes and being superheroes, fighting alongside, supporting them. So as a leader, when you're in a crisis, you have to learn how to not manage people, because it's much more difficult because we were all remote, but to inspire and lead people, because they have to self-manage a lot more. So I would say, our secret during the pandemic was to be very clear on what our purpose was, which was to support our hospital during their time of greatest need, have a fantastic plan to be, not to shrink ourselves, but have a growth mindset. I believe so much in what you believe you become. And if you have it's a pandemic, no one's going to want to donate. Everybody's going to be like too busy. Nobody's going to care. Everybody's going to hoard their money. That's what you're going to put out there. But if you believe that people will want to come to the support and aid of the hospital who serves people, in our case, who are on the edges and are the most marginalized, and you go out to the market and say, you will be making a difference, and you believe you have a growth mindset, people will respond. And that's what happened. We had our best year ever, 2020. And a lot of people said, well, it's going to be a one-trick pony because it's, it's 1 year. We're having a better year this year because growth mindset and that alignment with our values and really having a focus and a plan that we could share with people, people believed, and we were able to deliver on that plan. And my staff felt inspired to be on the side of a solution, as opposed to, oh, there's nothing we can do. You said, you have power, you have agency, you are on the side of the angels. Come with me and help. And that's what.
And you can tell that worked. I mean, you certainly got recognized for that among the other things you must have been doing, but that's incredible to be recognized as a top performer during that period in a sector that was so challenged. So I just think that's absolutely amazing, Jennifer. And
Thank you.
I'm just so impressed. Were you leaning on any advice from, were you channeling advice from your mom? Were you had mentors? How is it that you kept your energy up then?
Well, one of the things I believe, again, it's about people. You need your board of directors in your life, not at work. Like most people work in companies, organizations that have a board of directors. I have a board of directors for my own life. So I have people who advise me. I have people who support me. I have, 3 or 4 CEOs that I call when I have, I have questions. I have people in my personal life who work in different parts of different industries. I have one friend that does nothing but train people. And when I have HR issues, she's on speed dial. So I've surrounded myself with a few key people that are my go-to people outside of my organization. So I have sounding boards. I also have a few truth tellers. I have a few people in my life, because once you become very senior, people are afraid to tell you the truth. People don't want to either disappoint you. There's a power imbalance and they feel like they can't. So I have a few people in my life who I say, when I get outside the lines, when I get offside, you're the one that has to tell me the truth. And that helps a lot, especially the more senior you become. You don't want to become, disengaged or biased or have all your blind spots and no one challenges you. You need those people in your life that challenge you and say, no, you're offside here.
Yes.
Or you're blind to this. Yeah, really important. So I have my little board of directors who I go to for different things, and they tell me the truth.
I love that. I love the fact that you have a personal board of directors, and it reminds me of how my parents would say, surround yourself by good friends, right? Your friends are who you are. So that's fantastic.
And they should be truth tellers. Your friends, I also say to myself, talk to yourself as you would talk to your friends, because that's one of the most difficult things, especially when you're only in an environment, you're by yourself, or you fail at something. The negative talk really does so much damage on your psyche. So I often say to people, when you do something that you fail at, or you haven't lived up to your own expectations, talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend if they were telling you this. Instead of saying, can't believe it, you totally failed, talk to yourself in that same way that you would talk to your friend. You'd be like, yeah, it wasn't your best day, but blah, 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 blah. The same thing with my board of directors. They're kind, but when I completely get out of line or I've completely missed the show, as my friend would say, they tell you. You know, I had a friend just tell me the other day, I was going back and forth on whether or not I was going to do something. And he finally said to me, it sounds like you just don't have the courage not to be liked. So he goes, if you're not going to admit that, fine, but that's what it's about.
That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of truth and board of directors, be it a personal as well as a professional one, yeah, I couldn't agree more how invaluable that is to kind of be our mirrors, so to speak, on, or they know us, the reflection of ourselves,
Right.
help us see the pitfalls that we may not see. Changing the script again on that, speaking of truth, is there a truth that you know dear to your heart that no one else agrees with you on? Anything that come to mind?
A truth that I know no one agrees with me on. I would say this, not no one agrees, but often people will say you can't be it until you see it. And I don't believe that, because I was the first Black woman to lead a hospital foundation or a healthcare executive ever in Canada. That's what people told me when I got this job. And so I'd never seen it. And you don't always have to see it. As my mom would say, somebody has to be first. So I don't believe you have to see it. I think you have to see maybe aspects of it. I think you have to have people that support you and say it's possible, but it cannot be achieved unless you see it. Well, then there will be so many things people of color and women and people who are disabled and 2S LGBTQ people never do, because it has not been done yet. So I'm not a fan of that saying. Because I'm living proof that it's not true.
Most of what Carl and I are doing now is based on those principles of just trying something, you know, and a vision or an idea. Even if the waters are streaming the other way, we go against the grain.
Exactly. Anybody that's doing something for the first time hasn't seen it. And once it's been done, of course, more and more people do it. But if I truly believe that I could not get this job as the president and CEO of Women's College Hospital because there had never been another Black person get this job, then I wouldn't have applied. And I would not be here. I had never seen it. I believed it could be done. And I went for it. And then now somebody else can say, I now have seen a president and CEO that looks like me. But we cannot let that adage of you have to see it to believe it hold us back. It's better to have it, but you have to believe you can achieve it, even if you're the first.
I've been following your career, Jennifer, for a while, since we worked together way back then. And I was just quite impressed. I imagine trying to navigate, to go look back and say, okay, it kind of makes sense of it in this way. And so if you had to give advice to others, like how to get there, you've given such amazing thoughts already, but does it make sense the path you went? Like the hobbies you took made sense to this, and it begets that, and it begets that? Like, how could you tell others, hey, this is probably a great option or way to get to where I need to go?
Well, I think, it's as individual, your path is as individual as anybody's could be, because we're all very unique. But there are certain things I believe that you need to have in your world in order to be successful. I really believe in volunteerism. And it's not just because I work in not-for-profit, but because it gives you opportunities to try things safely, to learn things without having to pay to learn them, and to life experiences that you may not have otherwise that you can use in your career. So it's a really safe journey. And it also is a journey of self-discovery. You also get to be in new networks. Can you imagine if you're not handy, I'm not handy, but I joined Habitat for Humanity as a volunteer, you end up meeting a whole bunch of people that you may not come in contact with. So it expands your world. So I believe anybody that's serious about networking and about really learning new skills in a way that is very accessible, volunteerism for me has been a pathway. Had I not volunteered at Caravana for 5 years and learned how to write proposals and run events, I could have never applied for that job at the Science Center. In fact, it was that volunteer role, which was my biggest ace in the hole to get that big job that I thought was so out of reach. So I think people really underestimate the power of the skills you learn as a volunteer. I think mentorship is important. I think people can look for mentorship in peers as well as people above them. And even with say with people that are not at the same level. I learn a lot from the younger people I mentor, keeps it cool and hip and relevant. So I think that having mentors at different ages and stages and not just looking always for the most senior person, you can look for excellent people who are doing things at your level that you can still get mentorship for. And I would say the big one is I have always gone the path less traveled. And I always say that's from my mom, coming to a country where she didn't even realize it snowed for 5 months. My father thought he didn't have to work in the winter because he couldn't imagine that people actually got up every day and went to work in the snow. And going and being that brave, I've always said that those are my ancestors that I'm carrying with me. So I would say looking for those paths less traveled and not being afraid of them and not being afraid because you fail at them, that's just redirection. If you fail at something, that's just redirecting you to something else. So those are my things, and pay attention to your values. When you go places that are not aligned with your values and the people are not aligned with your values, it's probably the worst situation. I've done that more than once in my career. I've gone for the paycheck or the great name of the company or organization, thinking that would make me happy. And in the end, it didn't. And that's why value alignment and aligning yourself with people who care about you and your development are key.
I'm sensing a recurring theme here and just your overall spirit and aura. If you had to write a book tomorrow, what would you write about, Jennifer?
I am writing a book.
Fantastic.
I love it. I love it.
Well, I have an idea for a book. And it is going to be about this idea of being a values-driven, courageous person, how people can lead that way. Because I think that there are so few particularly diverse leaders. So it's going to be about being first, the only person sometimes, and diverse, the mantle of doing that, how to do that well, and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way in doing that. So a lot of what we've talked about here, how to overcome some of the systemic issues that we all face as diverse people, the barriers, the concrete ceilings, how to open a door open a window when the door closes. I want to give people a little bit of a roadmap on my journey and many other people's journeys so that they can see themselves, because in many cases, as I've said, there is no one to see, and we need to sort of bring those people together. So that's what I would be writing about.
Fantastic. I look forward to reading it when it comes out.
I hope so. Everybody has to buy one.
I cannot wait, Jennifer. And you got to be on this show when the book comes out so we can, I cannot
Carl
wait.
knows that I've been a fan of his since before the gray and the beard.
I always had a beard, but it was
always had a beard.
But
yeah,
it was always
I like
living.
how you've added the gray though.
Yeah, the kids did that. No, I just can't wait. I actually, we're just connecting with someone who just wrote a book. Have you heard of Steve Anderson?
I've heard.
If you could read his book, what's his book, Sean?
Driven to Succeed.
Driven to Succeed.
Yes, I've heard of the book.
Yeah. He's a deputy mayor of Shelburne, but he was a lawyer, and he has Jamaican Canadian background and talked about his journey as well. Great book to read, but looking forward for you when you're ready to read.
People need to have a plan. People think your life happens to you organically. And you need short-term and long-term, not just goals, but plans. And you have to be flexible. You have to sometimes, like I say, look at that redirection. If things are not going the way you expected, you have to be open to what's the world telling me? A bit of where should I be moving? And so having a plan is key, because no one's coming to save you. That's the big, I particularly find with young people, they expect people to sort of give them the plan and tell them what to do. And you have to actually live the plan, and you have to save yourself. There are many times that I've been in, really challenging situations where I was in a job where I was ostracized because I believe, speaking the truth. And having that network outside of the place I was working that could be my advocates and my allies really helped me. They came into the room with me when I needed them, and they were in the room when I wasn't there. And that is so important. That's why having good people all around you all the time, inside and outside your organization, peers, people above you, people that are not even in your industry, is so, so important.
I understand. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, man. It seems like with a lot of what you've said today, just as having me reflect on my own life and my own goals, and I find you incredibly inspirational, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been a really, really good conversation.
Well, I didn't want to disappoint Carl. You know, he's
Got to come correct, Jennifer. No, come on.
No, I don't.
Not at all. I paid her to say that.
No. I rarely get nervous, but when you know somebody for like 20 years and they ask you on their show, you're like, I don't want to disappoint them.
Not at all.
Yeah. So awesome. And I know our guests will love it too. So there you have it, folks. Thank you again, Jennifer, for joining us today. Carl, brother man, you know, it's a peach as always.
As always, good to see you, man. Don't forget to shovel my driveway, Sean.
Yeah.
Mine too. No, I gotta get the boys to do it.
Might take a few days till it warms back up, but I'll be there.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So for all our fans out there, you know, stay cool, everybody. And remember, you can live your life as is, or you can chase a dream of where you want your future to be. Peace.